So, you are a business and a life coach, and you help people really focus on thought work and beliefs that they hold that may be stopping them, or holding them back in life and business. So, talk me through the process. If someone came to work with you as a coach, you're their coach, what would be the process involved if, for example, you got to the bottom of it and you found out, okay, this person has a goal and they want to achieve that goal, and you're going to help them achieve that goal by putting some sort of plan in place. So what would be involved? What's your process as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's gonna be a multi-level process, when we're doing that, but I think you're right in saying that the first thing, obviously, that we need to do is discuss what the goal is, like, having that direction, right? Like, if we have, um and I know you and I have joked about this because we have different names. You have the sat nav, we call it the GPS, but you gotta set your GPS for somewhere to go. Like, you can't just say, "I just want success." That's so vague. It's not really got a direction. I mean, it feels like it's a good thing, but it's not measurable, right? And it's not really attainable if you can't measure it. So first and foremost, we figure out where it is that we're going, right? And then I take people through a process of how do you learn to your think about your direction as you're moving there, right? In terms of thought work. Like, I mean, for the goal setting, we have a goal. I often will have people work backwards from the goal and kind of establish, like, I start with depending on if we're looking at the goal specific, when we think that goal will happen, then, like, let's say it's the 5-year goal or a 10-year goal. Then we work backwards from there and we touch on very specific things that we can hit. So, like, mile markers, so that we know, okay, this is when I expect this to happen, by this time. And we're specific about that. And we make it measurable and we make it attainable so that it is something that we can do. But then we're left with this, like, often a soup of thought, right? We get stuck in the idea of we need to know exactly how. And I know that we've spoken about this before on one of our chats, is that people really get stuck in these cycles, or what we call the tyranny of how. They're like, I don't know how to do those things, therefore I cannot do those things. And I would argue that's not true. I would argue that what we need to do is just kind of address the thought patterns that are happening, because you need to be aware of the thoughts that are happening and then learn how to get where it is that you're going
Mhm.
through changing the thoughts. So, okay, and that might sound confusing, but the first thing I teach people to do is to really learn to observe their thoughts. How do you become the observer of your thinking? So often our thinking is a little bit, it's stuck in these places of automatic. It's kind of like we're not really aware of our thinking patterns, and we are having like 60,000 thoughts a day of just stuff that's ruminating in there and kind of getting in that space, and we don't really understand what's going on. So I want to slow it down and be goal specific and look at what are all the thoughts that are circling around about this goal that you have. So we learn to kind of look at those goals. And I call that observe and report. I'm like, observe what the thinking is and then report it down, get it out, write it all down,
Mhm.
right? But then what I want people to do is, once they've gotten all of that out, once they've I mean, I really like people to get in there and write. So really get in there, get to the nitty gritty of it, really get it all out. Once you've done that, it's really important for you to then not only report, but do a report on your report, essentially, extract the information from there so that you can see what the patterns are and really start looking. So we will write down the information and then start looking for the facts. And what you'll find is that there are very few facts that are floating around in our head.
I was gonna say that.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, Joe Dispenza will say that 95% of those 60,000 thoughts are negative, and,
Negative.
like,
Yeah.
most of them have no basis for being actually true, you know?
Yeah.
But I know what you said there about getting people to actually write down the thoughts and then do a report on that. It's like an investigation, and I think that would be really a good point to come from a place of curiosity rather than beating yourself up or feeling hopeless and going, "Oh, I can never snap out of these negative thoughts." Why don't you write it down, all of your thoughts, like just like you're saying there, and go through it like you're some sort of investigator investigating something interesting, you know, and going, "Oh, because the it's better that we separate our emotion from those thoughts if we can when we're actually reviewing them instead of getting emotional about it because and just see it as a matter of fact that that's what you were thinking at that time and it's not
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily true. And what can you do about those thoughts? Can you be more observant? Can you switch your thought from the next time someone triggers you? For example, you see a person who triggers you and plan then, okay, if I see that person again, how could I change my thought about that person?
That's
You
right.
know, it's just about, again, just you can't change all 60,000, I don't think, in one day, but pick probably your most annoying thought, the one that keeps coming up again and again and again, and
Yeah.
maybe on that one and just see, can you think about it from a different point of view? Can you flip it? Because
Yeah.
it makes your life better. It makes you feel better when you're not weighed down by whatever thought that is or thoughts, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what's really are you familiar with Byron Katie's method where she says, judge your neighbor, write it down, ask 4 questions and turn it around. And when like her whole process really like a lot of she calls it the work. Right? And a lot of her stuff is really, getting in there and understanding and you if you're thinking about a situation or something that's bothering you. Hers is about really getting to the bottom of things that are bothering you, but this is very similar to that. But what happens is when we get out of what's happening here and we get it onto paper, it switches how we're able to look at it. When it's in our head, I think we tend to victimize ourselves, and I think that that happens even in goal setting, and that's why we get so wrapped up in this place of, I can't do it, I don't like directionless, you know? It's or directionlessness. It's kind of like a feeling that we end up having, right? Because of all this soup of thoughts that I think are competing to be the most important. And so when they're happening, we get stuck in that emotion. But when we can see what we're thinking on paper, it's like we have this different way of looking at it. We're able to understand and reason with it, perhaps, and to make plans and see, oh, that's interesting that I thought that. That's interesting that I wrote that down. Do I really feel like that? I think and it allows us to come to a situation with more compassion, with more understanding, and with more ease, or at least a willingness to find it to be in
Mhm.
ease,
Yeah.
easeful, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful of being able to do that. And while it helps us with situations that are hard for us to get through, like if we're having something, go on with somebody and we need to get out all of our thoughts on it and it seems to be the best way so that we can really look at the situation. I think the same goes for when we're trying to do something that may feel a little uncomfortable, when we're trying to create something new in our lives, when we're trying to attain a goal, whatever it is. And so when we're making that change, it's really about being able to look at what might be standing in our way, the way we're thinking, and how to approach it a different way.
Mhm. Yeah,
because
because
we're just unaware.
yeah, I don't know about you, but I know personally myself, your thoughts can be so powerful because say for example, you need to do something like me and you are both doing this personally at the minute with Bob
Yeah.
Proctor, and doing Gap,
Yeah.
and there's between what you know and what you do. And I think a lot of times the thoughts really can get in the way. For example, something stupid like I really gotta get up and do my dishes. And then or I gotta get out and get for a nice long walk. And sometimes you really, really talk yourself out of it because you're letting your thoughts really linger. And sometimes I don't know the answer, but I know for myself that sometimes just saying to yourself, "Get the hell up. Get up and just get it done."
That's
And
it.
I know that can be difficult for people to go, "No, I can't just get myself up," or whatever. I don't really know the answer to that for people unless this brings us all back again to the goal because, you know, goals keep us accountable. I think that's why it's so important that everybody should have goals in your personal life and your professional life because a goal keeps you accountable. It keeps you on track to the vision of your future, what it
Abs-
is you actually want in your future. Because you don't have to settle for the crumbs. You don't have to. There's some area of your life you really are not happy. You can change that, and it's process. I understand that, but it's just important that people know you can change your life. You don't have to settle for the crumbs. You can have something better and something that it is you want. That's where having a vision, having a purpose is connected. What is your purpose? And it doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to win a, Nobel Peace Prize. It doesn't have to be as huge as that. It could be I have a purpose for being healthy. That's part of my purpose, to be a healthy person or to be a kind person or an abundant person or to help other business owners, whatever. No one can tell you your purpose. But Joe Dispenza had taught us this, that there's 5 levels of motivation when it comes to purpose. Now, I don't know if I'll remember all 5 off the top of my head because I wasn't planning to say this, but the number 1 at the very top of having purpose in your life, one at the very top that will give you the most motivation is something that's selfless when it's for other people.
yeah.
If it's
To be in service
to
too.
be service, yes. And the one at the very bottom, I cannot remember the ones in the middle. If they remember them as they come to mind, I'll say them. But the one at the very bottom, the least motivating one was money.
Yeah.
You're doing something for money.
Money
And that's
is not a
and
good motivator. It is
no,
not a good motivator. We think it's a good motivator when when we're in kind of the pit of if something's going on and we don't like our life, we think that money's going to make the difference. However, I would say that it may make the difference, but it won't get you up to do the thing.
yeah,
It won't be what actually changes you.
yeah,
So it's like otherwise you'd have people that would gladly, like they don't run into the issues with going to work every day. They're like, man, I'm making money.
yeah,
It's because it's not enough of a motivator because we all know that we have come up with things and ways to get around not having enough if we don't have enough, right? Like
yeah,
you figure out that what is most important. No, like we get to look at our lives and what's most important is the people that we surround ourselves with, how we showed up in their life. I mean,
yeah.
there probably are people out there where money is a great motivator for them. And I would just say that while that is true, it's probably not the majority.
No, because
Actually, it's definitely not the majority.
yeah. I mean, there's always exceptions everywhere.
Yes.
But obviously what that's showing is that we are wired to care for each other and to help each other. That's just who we are as human beings. We're
Absolutely.
wired to do that. So it's using that then to your advantage when it comes to thinking about your purpose. What is my purpose on this planet? And it doesn't have to be like these celebrities and you don't it's just what I would say tapping into your heart. Your heart has an intelligence. And Greg Braden has a fantastic technique to help you tap into your heart intelligence. And it's just 4 simple steps. Um, it's just tapping your heart center. That's step 1, just so that if you tap it, it means you're placing your attention on it. So it's just in your breastbone. That's your heart center.
Yeah.
That, number 1. Number 2, slow your breathing down. So 4 breaths in, 6 breaths out. So the breath out should be a wee bit longer. Just do that for a couple of minutes while still tapping. Number 3 is focus on one of these emotions: gratitude, appreciation, care, or compassion. You focus on whatever one comes easier to you. For me, it's gratitude. I think we all know what gratitude feels like, because when we receive something from someone, we know we go, oh, thank you. We know the feeling of gratitude. So that's step 3. Focus on one of those emotions. And then number 4 is ask your heart the question. Greg Braden will say, don't ask your brain, because your brain and lives in polarity. It's yes, no, black, white, up,
Right.
down.
Right.
It will give
Absolutely.
you pros and the cons, but with your heart. And this is science. We're not even talking woo-woo here. This is science, because the Heart Math Institute have all the science to back this up, that the magnetic field around your heart, and that your heart has that intelligence. Your heart already knows the answer before you even ask the question. And you could say, what is my purpose? And just listen. And if you hear something, people may hear words, people may get a tingling sensation. I don't know, that it'll probably be different for every person, but just tune into how you are receiving that message. I would say step number 1, tune into your heart intelligence, find out what is your purpose. And then looking at your purpose, look at the vision then of your life. How do you want to live your life in accordance with your purpose? And then that helps you once you know what your purpose is. It's amazing, because it helps you then make decisions on what to say yes to and what to say no to. And
Yeah.
typically we should say no to the things that are not in alignment with our purpose,
Yeah.
or that is going to waste our time. And then from there, from the vision, that's where we set goals. And goals are just like those little stepping stones or boulders in the river to help us get to the other side of the river, which is your purpose and your vision. It's just coming full circle about, like you says, working backwards, reverse engineering your life. And when you find it difficult to get up and do something because your thoughts are getting in the way, if you know your purpose, I would say that would actually help you get up and do what you have to do, because this is so important to your life. This is the way you want to spend your life. And this is actually bigger than you. And other people are dependent on you for this purpose. So
Yeah.
that's
I love that, because I will say that, and we've talked about this before, but as being somebody that facilitated hypnosis for years, and doing the kind of hypnosis I did, which it's called QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique. And it was a mix of past life regression hypnosis, but then also tapping into people's higher consciousness, and having a conversation with them. They would come with a list of questions, and then we would ask their higher consciousness these questions, and they would get really profound answers. I can tell you that at least 95%, if not more, must have been more, 98% maybe, had the question, what is my purpose? And it's amazing to me, and this is what I was thinking this morning in doing thought work and looking at thought work and all of this, how weird. And I think thought work kind of comes into this, right? It kind of weaves into this, into the heart resonance. We are simply not taught how to think. We are not taught that thinking is an option. There is an automatic style of thinking, but thinking on purpose, that's something we get to do. We get to decide, oh, I recognize what it is that I'm thinking, right? And so in that process that I take people through, right, we've got the observe and report, we've got extracting the facts, but then we've got, is this, do I want to believe this?
Mhm.
Is this something that I want to believe? If not, what thought can I create? Or what thought can I pull that feels like I can resonate with that? I think the same thing goes for understanding our purpose and listening to those thoughts. So really getting into that heart center, really getting into asking ourselves the question, being purposeful, and then listening. It's really hard for us to do. And then what ends up happening, I would say, I don't know if they address this in what you were speaking about, but we have a tendency, because actually, this really reminds me of something else you said. We have a tendency to not believe ourselves in what we're thinking. So especially when it's something positive, because we have such a strong negative bias in what we're thinking. So if we were to sit and listen to our heart, and then we ask ourselves, what is my purpose? And then we are actually given the answer by listening and tuning into, and the ability to be able to listen, we will negotiate that away. We would say, I must not have heard it right. That must not be it.
Yeah.
I don't want to act on that. I don't want to do the dishes right now. Right? It's the same thing of negotiating. I need to get up and do things. I need to do this. I need to do that.
Yeah.
These are little nudges, I think, that our higher consciousness, our spirit offers us all throughout the day. They're little ways for our thinking to get in and cause us to question. But we spend so much time negotiating those away. And it's interesting, when you're doing hypnosis, it's something I address right away, that is your higher consciousness voice that's trying to speak to you. The rest of it is your ego voice. And it has the temperament of a toddler. Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. I'm the only one that's right. Pay attention to me. Right? And it wants to be relevant. And it's loud. And it needs attention. And when we're trying to help people get into that soft state of hypnosis, it's really loud. And it's really calling for attention. So, and it'll just keep, popping its head. And Dolores Cannon said, it's like it will pop its head in and say, don't forget me. Remember me? Because it wants to be relevant always. Mm-hmm. And so when we're creating our goals, when we're deciding what we want to think on purpose, it's really important that we look at that this is what the ego does. This is the process of thinking. Nothing's gone wrong. It's just what it does, but it also doesn't mean that it's right. And that we do get these little bits, these little shining moments all through the day that are offering us a different way, a different path, a different thought, a different feeling, right? Because each thought that we have has a feeling attached to it, right? And so making sure that, there are little ways of us getting around those automatic negative bias, right? There are these little things, but we negotiate those away so often.
We do. And do you know what? Just as you were talking there, I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you said. What came to my mind was a bit of a fear that I have. A fear, no, not a fear, a concern. I have a concern just for humanity in general. And I'm talking about myself as well. Our environment is even more stimulating than it's ever been, probably in the history of what we know of the planet. But certainly in recent times, because of the internet. And of course, the internet's great. We wouldn't be able to do this without the internet. But I think it should be controlled. And as in the amount of time that we spend on it. And we're always distracted by our devices, whether it's our laptops or our phones or our iPads or the TV. It's like most of our day is just spent being distracted.
Yeah.
And what I would be seriously concerned about when you're talking about thinking, a lot of people are losing that as a skill. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. That sort of saying. And if we don't use our thinking capabilities, what way are we going to end up in the future? What way is our children going to end up in the future if we don't even create thinkers anymore?
Well, we're
And
already, I mean, I don't want to interrupt, but I also want to interrupt. We're already seeing what's happening with that. We're seeing how when people are not taught to think critically, to not question things, to not to not leave space for other, like for anything,
Mhm.
right? That's what we're experiencing right now. That
Yeah.
everything is very definite. Everything, like, you have this, but you believe this is that. And it's very problematic. And it has taken us all out of critical thinking. And
Yeah.
we're not in that space where we can look at things and say, like, oh, like, I see that this is happening. Is there nuance for this? No. And so we're seeing extreme ways of thinking. And they may be extreme ways that you can side with, and they may be extreme ways that you don't. But we all are kind of ending up in these ways of thinking where it's almost like these echo chambers of thought that we're not even allowing space for critical thinking inside of that.
Yeah.
And it's really problematic.
Yeah. It is because we're living in a world of extremes and in a world of polarity, and people think, it's either right or wrong or yes or no, and there's no in between. So if, an extreme left wing's extreme right wing, and
Yeah.
instead of people having that skill, again, it could come down to the education system as well. I don't know about the American education system, but I know our one, kids are just, especially when they go into secondary school, from 11 upwards, it's a lot of most of their subjects. Maybe I'm thinking about my own girls. They may have one where they're trying to be, maybe in English, or they have a subject called life work.
Yeah.
They're the only two real subjects where they may be encouraged to debate and to think critically about things and look at both all sides of the arguments. But other than that, all the other subjects are taught to the test. You're taught to regurgitate this information so that you pass this exam. So it's all just about remembering information and not really getting into the crux of, your creativity, your higher thinking concentration,
Yeah.
um, focusing on something. So that definitely has a massive part to play as well as technology. But my real concern is that in this day and age, does anyone, here's my question, does
Yeah.
anyone have an original thought these days?
I mean, I'm assuming there are original thoughts, but the interesting thing about that is probably also I can't know that. Yeah, but yes, I would say yes, because here's the deal. While we're all part of in terms of my understanding, I feel like all part of this one big thing of higher consciousness, right? Like we all are connected somehow. But then we also all are individual pieces in that bigger story with our own histories, right? Our own upbringings, our own ways of looking at things that make it specifically us.
Mhm.
And so I think we may all see and recognize the same things. However, we are we are experiencing them through a different lens, right? And it's unique to us. The breakdown may be very similar. And if somebody is spouting off the information, and we're all receiving the same information, and I would say, same, I don't know if but do you know what I mean? Like we're receiving information from these little handheld devices that are always close to us, right? Our phones, or we're sitting in front of it and we're receiving information that's in front of us. Is it the same information? Maybe. But how we receive it and then project it, I think, is individual when we're using our thinking brain. However, I think what's happening is because of that, because of these handheld devices, because of the constant computer, the and because of the fact that humans are having 60,000 thoughts a day at least, and we're not questioning those thoughts, that's where it becomes problematic. That's where I think the thoughts kind of ruminate, and kind of swim around in that soup over and over that is our thinking. And that's why it's important to pull them out of our brain and to write them down and to look at them and then decide what do I think when I look at this thought? Right? Is this something that I want to think? Is this something that I want to believe?
Yeah.
And because we're not doing that step so often in our day, it's just happening. It's at the very base level of being human. I think it's in that lizard brain where so much of this stuff is existing. And really, it goes back to many of our conversations that we've had is the brain, it wants to survive. It wants to seek out pleasure. It wants to avoid pain, right? And it's constantly figuring out how to do that,
Yeah.
right? But really that survive and thrive idea. And then obviously it wants to be efficient. It wants to save calories. So thoughts are recycled
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah, I mean, because I agree that when you said that when we all see information, it's unique to us how we perceive it, how we process that, and what we do with that information. Absolutely. That is unique to you because you have unique experiences, beliefs, and, a viewpoint to the world. I'm talking more about, you know, creation. Are we able to, and apologies if I'm getting lost in the sun. You probably can't really see me too well, sorry. But I'm talking about, are we engaging and tapping into our ability to be creators? I don't mean copying trends. I'm not talking about that because
Yeah.
there's so many trends out there and people just jump on the bandwagon. And that's fine. People like trends. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with jumping on trends. I'm just saying, is there going to be more people creating new things, or are we just all saying, repeating
There's
what other people are
always going to be people creating new things. That's what I believe. Honestly, I
doing?
believe,
When
I
you
think humans, what makes us is the ability to dream, is the ability to take things to the next step. And while some of us might not be, and we're stuck, there's always going to be innovators that are taking it beyond. It's just like that constant sense of wanting to progress, wanting to do things. It hits us at different times. But it's kind of like that whole thing that, it's within us, like when we're babies, when we're learning to walk, that drive to do and to do something like it's just a general drive that's in us to do those things. As we age, that changes, right? Like that obviously shifts because we get external influence, but there's always going to be people that break through that general soup, that
Mhm.
swim across to the
Well,
other side.
yeah, I want, do you know what? I'm going to turn my chair around because
Okay. Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
you can
The sun's really coming in.
turn my camera off 2 seconds, then you keep talking.
Okay. But I do think that is, that is really part of it, is that just in being human, right? Just in how we do have this desire to progress. We just have to match that understanding of knowing that sometimes when we feel stuck, it's because we are not progressing and we are not seeing our way to progress. But when we, I think it's within us and there will always be somebody. It's like the whole thing about running the mile in 4 minutes or under 4 minutes. Like nobody thought it was possible. Therefore, nobody was doing it until somebody did it. And then once somebody did it, everybody could do it now. And so I think it's about communal belief, and there are ideas about communal belief, and everybody will have those ideas until somebody decides to break out of them. And once somebody breaks out of them, then there's all this opportunity. And I feel like right now we're in this weird place where we're asking computers to do that work for us. I think we've been there, but now with AI, there's all this idea of, I need you to help. But I also think that's causing people to think and look at things a new way. I really have faith in humanity to be able to do that. I don't know where that goes. I don't know what that means. But I just know that it is within humans to constantly be progressing.
Yeah. 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 And that's, you know, when you mentioned earlier on about taking up creating space, I love that. The thought of that. And that, again, that comes down to having that in a routine. That's why I'm so passionate about having a
Totally.
routine. That if you allow yourself some time every single day out of the 24 hours you have, I know everybody's circumstances are different. Some people have it harder than others. I get that. Um, but it's just so good for you to take some time away from your busy life. Because I would say most of your day is spent helping others and being there for others, but just to give yourself the gift of just creating a wee bit of space and looking at those thoughts, writing them down, reviewing them, and then doing investigation on those thoughts, as I mentioned earlier on. And then, pick one of them that's probably the one that bugs you the most or cause you the most difficulty or the biggest challenge and say, okay, if I experience this again, how can I think differently? And even just do that, one at a time. But we're not really ever going to get to the root of the problem and solve the problem if we don't create some space to actually do that and
Yes.
reflect on our thoughts and those goals and, moving towards your purpose every day. So that's why I'm such a big advocate for creating space for
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, you know, I think that's difficult for people. And I'm curious to see, why do you think that creating that space feels difficult for people? What do you think lies, beneath that?
I would say one could be people just, they maybe not aware that that's really important to create space. Maybe just lack of awareness could be one.
Mm.
Number two is they probably just don't really know process. Like, what should I do? What should I do in that process when I'm creating myself some space? And number three, they probably, again, a lot of, especially mothers, put themselves on the back burner as long as everybody else is happy, or I don't have the time because I need to do X, Y, and Z. And they probably think they don't have the time, or they just, there's not enough hours in the day to do it, maybe. And just not honoring yourself for a period of time, because we're, especially as mothers too, we're so selfless, especially because we're wired to, and not saying again, if you don't have children, you can't be selfless, of course. But we're just so wired to be looking after everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably my three, I would imagine, is why people don't do it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I find that that's all true. And that I think people are skeptical of thinking, like in the work that I've come across in having people do this work, a lot of people, I think because we have a little bit of that negative bias, are skeptical of creating that space for themselves because they don't see it as valuable. And I don't know if that's because that's been kind of ingrained in us or they haven't learned to see the value. But my real thought about it is that people just haven't been taught to listen to what's coming through when we're sitting and taking that space. And so they don't see the value in it because they don't really get that they're receiving the messages,
Yeah.
that they're receiving the way, that they're receiving the compassion, that they're receiving the softness when doing all that work of sitting down and giving yourself the space and looking at what you're thinking and listening to what you're thinking and believing on purpose and deciding to take action from there. We don't really believe it because as that stuff comes up, we negotiate it away. Therefore, we don't find the value in it.
Mm.
And so I think the idea, and listen, like I said, like this is not this is not necessarily true for everybody. We're all coming at it from different places, different experiences, different abilities to do that. But if we're all carrying around our phone and we're spending that time at any point in the day looking at social media or looking at emails or doing any kind of research on the computer, we've taken time that we could use to pull away and get into those spaces where we actually can make change,
Mhm.
shift the way we're
Abs-
thinking.
Yeah.
And we don't recognize it because social media, because, these different activities, they're time stealers.
Yeah,
They're
they
time
are.
stealers, right? And we don't recognize it until we start really looking. How much time am I actually spending on social media? How much time am I scrolling? How much, and
Yeah.
listen, I mean, this many of these clips will end up on social media, right? Like, because we're all looking at it,
Yeah.
you know, or
That's
we're all exposed to it in one way or another.
Mhm.
But we we can do it in a purposeful way, or we can do it in a way where we are not paying attention. And the
Yeah.
best the best thing we can do is turn on our thinking and do it in a way that is deliberate. And be deliberate about many of the things that we do. And you'll find in those deliberate actions how much your life, how those goals that you're setting, how doing all that thing can actually start to come true because you're making decisions on purpose.
Yeah. And just back to your other point, because I said three things. I thought you said two things. I think that'd be a great poll to put that up. And I actually asked people,
Yeah.
um, if you don't do some thought work and set aside some space in your day to do some thought work, why is that? And I ask them, is it because you don't know how to do it, you don't think it's important, you don't know, you have no time. It would be actually good to see some feedback on that, what people would say.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
Absolutely.
they don't do it, but I can tell you my whole life has changed because of thought work. Actually, Bob Proctor's program, Thinking into Results, it's called Thinking into Results. Bob teaches you how to think
Yeah.
and actually not that monkey chatter going on, the automatic one that you were talking about,
Yep.
actually purposeful, focused thinking.
That's
And I'm just speaking from experience, it just changed my whole life,
yeah.
especially professionally, So yeah.
Talk to me
So
about that. I want to hear about that of thinking, and doing thought work. I mean, this is obviously all stuff that I'm very interested in and stuff I take my clients through. So I want to know what your experience has been.
sure. Well, of course so the program was for 6 months and there is 12 modules in the program. So each module has a theme and you would spend 2 weeks on each module. And Bob would, talk you through some videos. You have to watch that video twice a day. So first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And then that comes with a workbook and you would have to do that reading and then answer the questions that are in that book that are related to the theme of the module.
Yeah.
So it really gets you to think about things you would never think about, like your beliefs. Where do your beliefs come from? Do you have some reason for having those beliefs? And if you change your beliefs, how would that change your life? And you know, getting into the whole nitty gritty of your whole mindset and your paradigm, which is really just the automatic part of your subconscious mind, what
That's
the
right.
a multitude of all your habits and your beliefs and your perception, and looking at that and just really tries to get you to think about seeing the world in a different way and think about possibility and about what you would need to do and what action steps you would need to take in order to change something in your life that you're not happy with,
So
and
how has shifting your paradigm in your like how has that benefited you?
so, I mean, getting into the routine, first of all, created a new habit for me.
Yeah.
So, getting into the habit of creating space in my day every single day, twice a day, to, really get into the thought work, really reflect on the way I think about the world and what I really need to change about myself. So that was a new routine. It was a new habit. I started changing my beliefs. The more, I got into this, the more I started believing in possibility. And then because I obviously left my job and and because of this program, I started my own business because I thought, yeah, I'm ready to go now
Mhm.
and start teaching this to other people because I went through the consultancy training program. And, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It wasn't just a straight line up to success in terms of, the amount of money I earned. It was crazy. It was, um, instead of a straight line, it was squiggles
Yeah.
and headaches. And it was sometimes lying on the sofa thinking, I just want to put the blankets over my head. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I feel lost. I feel stuck. And then other days you're feeling motivated. And it's just a roller coaster of a journey to do that. And that was certainly my experience. But the one thing I'd done was I could just kept being consistent and I just kept getting up every day, doing that study work and the thought work.
Yeah.
And then eventually it paid off that I started getting these clients through the door and, the program was definitely an investment of your money. It wasn't a cheap program.
Sure, sure.
I earned so much money. Like I earned like 3 years money within like that would have earned in my other job.
Yeah.
3 times that in a year I earned within a couple months. And it was just like, oh my God, this really does work. Plus it just developed my confidence and helped me to push myself out of my comfort zone to do things that I would never do before, which
Yeah.
would be the sales process. I hated like having to try to sell something or try to convince someone to do this. And then of course I was crap at that. And then just again
'Cause
with
that could the convincing, that's the no, right?
oh,
The no energy of convincing. Remember, like, look, and I just like for people that are listening that want to know about sales, that's the one thing is that's the hard shift I think for people to get over. You're telling me all of these things that happened in your paradigm shift, all of these benefits to your life. It's not easy, but all of these things that happened in your life. And yet, when you get to the sharing it with other people, that it could also help them and improve their lives, we then think we have to convince them.
mhm,
And the fact is that they can read your enthusiasm. If people want to change in their life, they're going to want to change it but they want to know that the way that they're going to change it works. And so it's going to take either belief in you, belief in the product, or belief in them.
mhm.
Somewhere around that, you need to make sure that you can address that with why they're coming to you. But there's no convincing. It really is. Here's the thing. Here's the amazing stuff that it does. And then making that offer of, I really think this would be great for you
Mhm.
because this is what you told me you wanted.
Yeah.
And then but that is the old way of being taught, I think, in sales. The old way is the convincing energy, and it makes people feel
Yeah.
gross.
I
It
know.
makes people feel gross that are selling, and it makes people feel gross that are being sold to
I know.
because it takes it out of. But if you can talk to them as if they're a person,
Mhm.
as a person who has gone through the process and understands what it was like to go through it and what it's like for them, and speaking to that, you got it.
Yeah, because I think there's nothing more powerful than your own story, and also testimonials.
For
When your
sure.
clients are, shouting from the rooftops, for you or for the
What did you say they're doing from the rooftops?
shouting. What do you think I said? Shouting.
Shooting?
Definitely not. Hopefully not.
That's a little bit of the accent that my American ears
Not
heard.
tired.
We'll have to put an explicit.
No, they're shouting from the rooftops.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Yeah. So then I think stories are powerful. Again, we're going back to
Yeah,
story. using the power of story to grow your business. You know, bringing in your story of, how that changed. But yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, I'm so grateful to Bob and for the work. And yeah, I think making such a big investment in that, which was a lot of money. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
a lot of money to, become a consultant for Bob. But I think when you have skin in the game, you're gonna really, get your ass into gear and do the
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
because you've skin in
Absolutely.
the game. You want to get a return. You go right. Yeah, I need to take this serious rather than it just being a little freebie course. You know.
What do you think so you recognize the paradigm shift that you had. What was your paradigm before it shifted?
Probably fear. There was a lot of fear there, or I did think that I was worthy to do it because of my background in education. I have a lot of years experience. I'm working in education, you know, for I think about 15, 16 years at that point. And I just wanted to continue the education because it was an educational program about your mindset,
Yeah.
because I'm a teacher at heart and I love teaching, even though I was a classroom assistant, but I still taught. And
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
wanted to teach people information that would actually solve a problem for them and actually change their life. So I was so passionate about it. And I knew that I would do whatever I had to do to keep growing and to keep getting better. So I did feel worthy that I could do it. But I think it was probably just the main shift for me was probably the financial investment because
Yeah.
without Kieran, I wouldn't have done it. I would not have done it only for Kieran, getting me the money to
Yeah.
invest because I just didn't have that kind of mindset. I was like, no way I could pay that off my mortgage or I could travel around the world with that kind of money. No, I was like, that's never going to happen. Kieran, thankfully, is more of a risk taker and he sees a lot of value in investing in yourself. So
Yeah.
that had to be the shift for me because then afterwards, I had then invested in the Donald Miller training. It wasn't as expensive as nowhere near like 3 times less, more than 3 times less than Bob Proctor, but it was still a significant amount of money.
Absolutely. It brought us together. It's been the biggest
And
value for
yeah,
me. It's
yeah,
been the biggest gift for me. I will
and
say
no,
that.
yeah, it was a no-brainer to invest that. So that is where the shift came for me. Investing in yourself and learning that information so that you can develop your confidence and go out there and do the thing you want.
You said something to me not too long ago that it has stuck in my head, and I swear, like, it is so important, but the spending time to invest in yourself instead of, in your own business, instead of investing in other people's business.
Yeah.
That we as business owners often forget to do,
Yeah.
of like really figuring out what it is that we want to do, creating that and investing our money. Our money has to go back into our business. It's just kind of the way it works. And we do that. And like, I was always taught kind of like, in order for the baby to grow, you got to feed the baby, and the baby is your business. And if you
Absolutely.
want your business to grow, you got to do it. But also, like, there's everybody's out there telling you that you need their thing for your business. And I mean, and there's so many moving pieces to that now,
Yeah.
right? And so I just think that there comes a time when it's like, yes, it's true. There are many things that I need to learn, or there are many things that I want to incorporate, but also there are different ways for me to put money in my business.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that came from actually, there was a big event happening and there was all these amazing speakers coming to the event and I was invited to buy a ticket and the ticket was like, I think it was like £1,300 plus you would have needed your accommodation on top of that and then getting dressed and because it was very fancy, like, all that
Yeah.
a weekend thing. And I was like, oh God, like, I knew it was a lot of money just for like a weekend event. And
Yeah.
um, I was like, and then the one of the speakers dropped out, so the tickets became cheaper, but they
Hmm.
were still like 700 odd pound or something for tickets. And I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And it was only a friend of mine says, "Do you know what, Carrie, why don't you just for once, or no, just not just for the time being, invest in your own business instead of investing in other people's business." And I was like, she's so right. She is so right. Sorry, my child just came in there. And I just took the money that I would have spent there and I went, right, I'm just gonna hire a professional videographer because I need professional videos so that I
Yeah.
can put it on a website and on my social media. And that's what I put the money into because I think that event would have came and gone and wouldn't have had a real impact. It was like a FOMO, fear of missing out. Oh, I gotta
Yeah.
see people.
Yeah.
But really, I know how these events go. You go and see these inspirational speakers and they just are gonna offer you to come on their coaching program. I
Yeah.
know the process.
Yeah.
I know the
Yeah.
all do it.
And
So
sometimes that's beneficial, right? Like, obviously, like, there are going to be times that's beneficial, but also what's beneficial to you is in investing in your own way.
yeah, it was so much more beneficial to say, take the money and spend it on a videographer for your own business instead of one here when you know you're going to be sold to, which at that point in my business, I was done with being sold coaching programs because I already invested in this huge big
Yeah.
program with Bob Proctor.
Yeah.
Uh, a couple of other little smaller things, but it was like, no, that would be great for people who are maybe starting off and who have maybe they're really, really thirsty for that a coach, or they maybe have when you're in the audience and you have like a connection to the speaker and go, like for me with Joe Dispenza, I'm like, whatever Joe does, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I'm whatever Joe Dispenza does, so it would be definitely beneficial for other people, but for me at that point in my life, it was just going to be a waste of time, to be honest,
Yeah.
and a waste of money because
Yeah.
I wasn't investing anymore in other coaching.
No.
So
And you still would have had to have gotten a videographer and done that work. And so it just it
no,
would have kept you away from the things that you knew you wanted to do. And I think that's what we learn as, as business owners, when to differentiate, like when to kind of look at things and be um discerning,
Mhm.
right? Of just say, okay, I know I'm going to need this. I know I'm going to need this. As coaches, right? There is value in coaching and I have zero, like issues with obviously people buying coaching. I buy coaching. I've got a coach, right? I think it's wonderful. However, that's not the only piece in the business. There are many different pieces in the business. And I think it's good to be able to look at all of these different things that it takes to run a business and to understand that and how to build from that and know that there are stepping stones and each thing. Like it all is part of it, but there has to be a way of looking at it and asking yourself, am I doing this because, and then again, this looks at why you're thinking what you're thinking. Am I doing this because I'm just fearful of missing out, like not going to that event? Is it just something I don't want to miss out at? Or is it something where if I were in the market for trying to find a new coach, would this be good for me to be able to go look at those coaches and
Yeah.
decide which coach is best for me? But we're not always in that space. And so really being able to look at how do I want, like, this is what makes us good business owners, is being able to not just throw money at everything, but
Mhm.
discern and look, what do I actually need to put money towards?
Yeah,
What can wait? And then
absolutely.
just, and being able to see, like, when is the time right? But also not coming from a place of always contracting and not wanting to expand at all, because there are those spaces that we can get caught into.
Oh, yeah.
I can't spend anything because, and then, that sets up this whole thing. But I think that's for another discussion.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're just under the hour. We're close to the hour, my friend.
Absolutely. What a wonderful discussion.
I know, and I really apologize for the sun coming in. I don't know if I look like an angel or something.
Definitely angelic. I would not apologize for the sun at all. You looked amazing.
Daughter walking in. So yeah, but sure,
It's
listen, it's real
it's
light.
their home. They
It's
get to
real
work
light.
home, so it's cool.
So I'll see you in the next conversation. And this has been amazing. Well, I think we should talk about some of our favorite, coaches or
Yeah,
mentors that we personally use their work in our own life.
absolutely.
I think we
I would
should
love
make
that.
with those type of people on our next conversation.
Let's do it because so many people have influenced me on my journey and really helped me being able to borrow belief from other people allowed me to take steps that I didn't know. So,
Yeah.
like, I hope to be that for people. And I also would love to share who is that for me. So, absolutely. Wonderful.
Perfect.
All right,
I'll
friend.
see you in the next
Thank you
conversation.
so much. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.